Hey there, I'm Nikki Waterson and I'm the owner of Paws for Giving, which is the online gift store for Good Hoomans. And you can find Paws for Giving at www.pawsforgiving.com.au, where I donate 50% of profits to Aussie animal rescues. Now, this is the very first episode of the Paws for Giving Rescue Podcast, also known as it will be, the Paws for Giving Rescue Pod or Paws for Giving Pod. Thank you so much for checking this out. We have a really great interview with Jax Brown, the Vice President of the Australian Animal Rescue, one of our oldest rescue partners at the Paws for Giving gift store. By the way, if you didn't know, you can watch this episode on YouTube and on Facebook in video. It is not just available in podcast format. We did this interview over Zoom, so you can actually check out all of our lovely faces on Zoom via video on YouTube or Facebook. I hope you enjoy the podcast. I have split this interview into 2 episodes. Our first half of our conversation was about Australian Animal Rescue, the rescue sphere and funding. And the second conversation was a bit more personal, where we talked about the personal impact of rescue, emergency services work, which is my background, and that kind of thing. Now, I will warn you that in the second episode in particular, there is some quite triggering content. So if you are not up for descriptions, we don't go into great detail, but talking about things like nightmares, bad experiences in rescue and in emergency services with animals, and themes of death and some darker, not nice things, then maybe give that podcast a skip. And if you feel like you are struggling to deal with any of these things, please don't hesitate to get in touch with Beyond Blue or Lifeline or your local supports. And along with me for this podcast is Emily Thomas, a great friend of mine and the co-host of the Paws for Giving pod. Now, I don't introduce Emily for quite a while because, let's be honest, it's my first podcast, and that's my excuse, but also because we'd been having a good chat before that, and I forgot that introducing Em was something that I should probably do. So please forgive me, and I hope you enjoy. If you find value out of this podcast, please don't hesitate to get in touch. Send me a message at Paws for Giving on Facebook or Instagram. Also an email, nikki@pawsforgiving.com.au. You can reach out on LinkedIn. I'm Nikki Waterson. And overall, I really hope you enjoy. Well, thank you so much for coming onto Zoom today, Jax. Like I said, I think I had a bit of a meltdown when you joined the call and I heard your voice for the first time and learnt that you are actually from Texas, because we have known each other for about 2 years now and I have never heard your voice and did not know that. So that was pretty exciting. Thank you so much for being here.
Happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. And I think it's really interesting. A lot of rescue workers that I talk to tend to be quite shy about interviews or getting on camera or audio, that kind of thing. And I think you're probably the real exception there in my experience, which I think is awesome. And I guess that just sort of says something about your personality. So are you a bit of an extrovert?
Not an extrovert at all, but very passionate about what I do. And if we don't talk about it, people aren't going to learn about it.
Yes.
And sort of stays closet and stays hidden. So, I think sometimes you just, as much as it's hard and as shy as you can be, you just speak out about it.
Yeah. And so you are the Vice President for the Australian Animal Rescue, which is, as you just reminded me, a volunteer position. Can you tell me a bit more about what you do with the Australian Animal Rescue?
So I've been with them about 3 or 4 years now. I was previously with another rescue for many years before that. I am the vice president on the committee, which means I do, a lot of the admin work, and I chair meetings and along with the president, and I'm a decision maker. But that's sort of a background role. That's not being that on a committee, that's a background role. I'm also a rescuer. So, I go out and I rescue, and I'm a carer as well. So I'm a licensed wildlife carer. I also care for neonatal kittens and lambs as well. So care. I'm an educator. We do a lot of talks with schools and scouts and RSL and, Lions Club, things like that. So I do a lot of those kind of talks as well. We've done some TAFE and VCAL stuff. So I've done some of that as well.
Is VCAL, is that another kind of vocational training or?
VCAT, I think it's the kids. It's the kids that do more of the hands-on learning.
Oh, okay, yeah, sure.
Yeah,
and you're based in Victoria, Melbourne,
I am.
Specifically.
Southeastern suburbs of Melbourne.
Yeah. Are you in lockdown at the moment?
Oh, we are.
How's that going?
Look, I'm all right with it. I'm happy just because I work from home and as for my job anyway, so I'm happy just to chill at home. But I know it's challenging. But as a rescue, we are still considered essential service, so we can go out and rescue and stuff if we need to.
That's really great. And I guess there's no rest then in the one sense, but it is such important work you do. And I feel so rude. I'm so sorry, Emily. I mean, you've been here for already part of this conversation. We obviously all had a chat beforehand and did all our introductions between us, but I forgot to introduce you at the start of this. So
not a problem.
Yeah. So for those watching or listening, Emily is a fantastic friend of mine who is an incredible friend of Paws for Giving, and she's an absolute animal lover. I think you'll agree with me that this is a good description of you. Absolute animal lover, a real smart cookie and a scientist, and she has been a great ally for Paws for Giving in just helping out, and I thought she would be a fantastic co-host for this podcast/video. So Emily, welcome. Thank you for coming along.
Thank you for having me. I must say it's been really exciting to watch Paws for Giving grow over the recent months since I've known you and become really good friends with you through this experience. So it's been wonderful. Yeah, it's actually been wonderful seeing how it's come along and being able to help you in any capacity. Even if it's just a conversation and brainstorming, it's been great.
Yep. It's normally in the form of, Emily, I need some consulting.
And then generally, what are we going on?
Yeah, generally we know that means trying to think of something, trying to think of a way around or what to do or what's next, what products are next, that kind of thing. So sorry, Jax, we got a bit off track there. I realised I was leaving poor Emily out. And there's so much that you do. It's just crazy to me. And we've had this conversation before, and this is one thing that I think is so incredible about you is that, I mean, so many rescuers and rescue workers or people on the committees, at all different levels of rescue, people just have no idea what they do. And people have no idea what the world would be like without that. Yeah. It's really scary. And I think that's a big part of why I created Paws for Giving, is because I saw a bit of what the world was like without that when I lived in Cooper PD. And being so remote, there was a fantastic little rescue, Josephine's Kangaroo Rescue, who would rescue orphan kangaroos. And she helped myself and some friends with like a litter of puppies. But without that kind of expertise and that knowledge, like, the animals, they just end up dying. And it's so sad because there's no one there to look after them. And then on top of that, the fact that you are able to go out and educate and spread that kind of information and awareness, I mean, you're having this huge impact. Where in Victoria, at least, where would you say the Australian Animal Rescue stands as far as the sizes of different rescues there?
We're probably maybe medium size. Most rescues in Victoria are quite medium size. I think it depends if we're talking about wildlife rescue, cat rescue, or how you break that down. So we're probably, I'd say a small medium would be where we'd sit size-wise, definitely.
Yeah, and you said that most rescues would be sort of medium in Victoria, and it depends on what kind of rescue you are. Now, I know that you do rescue cats and mostly wildlife. So how you class yourself between the two, or are you mostly wildlife?
No, we do a mix of everything. We also rescue lambs, and we'll take birds, we do cats, we do wildlife. We will rescue a dog. We don't care for dogs. That's the defining difference. And there's a lot of great rescues that take in dogs.
Yep.
So if we need to rescue, but it goes. There we do bunnies and guinea pigs, chickens. So we're sort of a mix of all. We're sort of an all animal.
Yeah. And Emily, I think I saw that you were possibly about to ask something. Sorry, go for it.
Yeah, no, I just had a thought about how rescues specialise, and it's actually very interesting that you're kind of like, while you don't foster dogs, you will, rescue them and find someone to foster them, maybe in a different organisation. But I never really had a thought about the separation between different rescues and what they might take in. Like, you take chickens and guinea pigs, and a lot of rescues might not take those smaller animals or more like livestock animals and just focus on the domestic. So that's an interesting take on
a lot of people would
something
know.
that's
right.
Yeah, that there was a question in there, and it was, do most rescues specialise in a particular type of animal, like domestic, cats and dogs, or, bigger to horses and things like that? How do you, is it, I guess it's the people who run the rescue and what they're passionate about that dictates who they're going to rescue, or, the type of animals they rescue?
I think so. I think that's where it comes to. It is personal choice. Some people are really passionate about cats, and that's where they focus their energy. Some people are very passionate about wildlife and about conservation, so they focus on wildlife. We work very close side by side with several very, rescue specific type rescues that are one animal or one type of animal, and it's what they have the energy and the time and the passion for. And they're needed, definitely, without a doubt.
Yeah, it sounds like that sort of creating that network of rescues so that you can cover each and every type of animal is so huge.
Yeah.
I know, that obviously happens in other areas, and you hear about where you'll have a dog rescue here in South Australia, and they will go to a specific dog breed rescue, like a German Shepherd rescue, or, a smaller or older dog rescue for like special cases. I know there's also I can't remember what they're called, but like the deaf and blind dog rescue that's in Victoria. I think I'm not sure if there's more than one, but there's a very specific rescue that obviously would have a lot of expertise in that, so that when animals are rescued and they, have those disabilities, that they can go to that rescue and receive that extra care. Do you find that creating those relationships and building that network is generally pretty straightforward, or is it kind of like many things can be in life and there can be a lot of difficulty and drama, or competing priorities and that kind of thing?
Look, I think anything human related, the ego becomes a problem.
Yeah.
And pretty honest about that. I think often ego gets in the way of a lot more networking and a lot more ability to work together. We all sort of have our ideas about how things should be done, and sometimes we can't get past that to work together. We are getting better. There's a group of us that are we work really hard to work together, but definitely, it's that. And, we all have our ideas about which way to go, and then you're sort of battling, which is a whole other thing, and we're all sort of battling for the same pockets of funding as well, so that can sort of
that would be really hard.
Yeah, grants and things like that. We're all sort of fighting for that same pocket of funding, so it does. The government and the funding and things, those all sort of add to the rift as well. But we are hard to work together. But often, as with anything human, the ego can sort of get in the way of it.
I never really thought of that, about how, because obviously the grants and funding there aren't that many for how many rescues there are. Is that a fair kind of statement? Like
that's not much.
Yeah, and while many rescues might receive a grant, and it might look like, because for anyone who's listening or watching, it's very easy. And I've actually done a blog article on the Paws for Giving website about how you can do this, to just go on and see most animal rescues who are registered with the Australian charity. Oh my gosh, I'm just having a blank there, but the what are they called again? The ACNC. Forgetting words. You can go onto the website and you can see the finances of rescues year after year. And when you look at that, some of them, they might have a grant of say $5,000 or $10,000. If they're really lucky, they might receive. And sorry, that's if they're lucky. Most of them won't have any grant from the government. And if they're really lucky, they might receive a larger grant. But for the most part, all rescue income tends to be, in my experience anyway, of just looking for individual ones, it tends to be from fundraising, bequests and donations and that kind of thing. Is that your experience too, Jax? The majority are definitely not government funded?
No, probably 90% of the funding comes from donations. Bequests come in there often where rescues are battling against organizations like the RSPCA, things like that. But definitely donations is 90% of what we get. The grants are a little better, but the criteria for them is insane. And often you're in the same pot as a human charity, you've got no chance almost.
Really? Oh, that's so interesting. I guess that's so sad, and I can see why that would be the case when you say that. Because humans are, they consider, the standard human consideration is that humans are superior to animals, isn't it? So in that sense, when people are going to be making that assessment, then that's probably the bias that comes into it, which is, I guess that's the whole other conversation, but changing that sort of view of humans having superiority over animals over time and trying to...
It might also be empathy as well. Like they can probably empathise with themselves in that situation that their charity is supporting, or know someone who has been affected by something that charity supports. Whereas animal rescues, unless the person's been a pet lover their whole life or been through something similar with some hardship with their animals, the people making these decisions may not value it as much as something else they're more familiar with, I guess.
Often the thing we battle to the most is getting people to understand the worth of an animal and the worth of wildlife and the worth of our planet and the worth of the work that we do, and understanding that the consequences of not valuing that and what that could be. And it's very hard. You have to bring it back to people. You have to find a way to link it back to the human in order for them to grasp. So, we often have to work that out in a way to link it back to people. And with Grant, we have to find a way to link it back to our volunteers, or link it back to, because that's the only way that we can get a grant, is to link it back to humans. So it is a battle. It's an uphill battle. Like I said, some of the grants are getting a little better, but definitely it's a pretty day-to-day battle with the grants. So most of ours comes from fundraising, and with COVID, of course, we do that for over a year. So
and I know that like Saber Life, for instance, they are pretty widely loved amongst rescue for the just vast amount of grants that they're sort of giving out, and the regular donations that they make. The vast sort of opinion towards them is overwhelmingly positive amongst rescue. They're doing incredible work. I believe they've donated over $3 million now in 7 years of the work that they've done. I also think I remember talking to you about, they have their Adopt a Dog platform, which has been really great. And we're hoping that they're going to do something for cats as well, because that's sort of the missing link at the moment, is there's nothing really suitable for cats at the moment. Have you heard anything more about that?
Not yet. We're waiting for it, definitely. It would be quite an amazing thing to have it open. Yeah, so I think for doing an absolutely fantastic job in the dog front, and it would be absolutely see cats have something like that happen for them as well. I think it's a shame that none of the companies out there that make things for cats haven't been able to pick up and run with the same ideas and thoughts that Saber Life have run with,
true.
and that, donating 50% of their things to rescue, they do the grants, and things like that. And so they do some really amazing stuff. And I think it's kind of sad that none of the companies, the companies out there that make things for cats have not decided to pick up and run with that platform. But definitely, we're all of us are just waiting quietly with bated breath for Saber up the cat platform for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And can we talk about the alternative pet rescue?
I'll try not to get too political because we use pet rescue.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
So I won't get too into that, but I think people have I guess the reality is that they don't give any of the money they make their sponsors and stuff to rescue. They do sometimes put out food. If they get a big donation, they'll offer some food, things like that. But they have made a fortune on the back of rescue. It's a big world.
So I have to say that I did use, this was several years ago when I adopted my dog, Kaylee. I found her through Pet Rescue and then went directly through the rescue and contacted them initially through that portal. But it was actually only recently Nikki and I were having a conversation about Pet Rescue and how their funding, not the funding, but their donations work. And I had no idea, not that I had actually made a direct donation to them, realised that from the outside you would assume they're saying, donate, make a donation, help support animal rescues. Then the money doesn't actually go to the animal rescues. It goes towards Pet Rescue and their costs. And I felt it as like a member of the general public. Obviously I hadn't looked into it, but I felt a little bit let down because I had the perception that money was going somewhere different than it actually is. And I think that's very I think you should be upfront about what it is. It's the ethics of that kind of concerns me moderately. That being said, use their service. Very much happy with my friend's dog. And, would I have found her and, have her as a part of our family for the past 6 years without that service? No. So...
Yeah, I call it a bit of a double-edged sword.
Absolutely.
We've adopted so many animals, so many cats, the rabbits, and so I do think that they serve a good purpose. But I think, only recently they I think there's a button in there that you can click to donate to the rescue, but it's so obscure, and I think this is where for me they border the ethics problems a bit. Is that there is, they've made millions in profit. If you look at their profits, they're raking it. They are absolute. Yes. And so little of that in general reaches the rescue for me, that's where the ethics are a problem, is that you are making money off the rescue. But this is actually a common issue that happens, and we can get into the politics of RSPCA and other big organizations and the money they sit on. And again, I think in rescue in general, the smaller rescues like ourselves and many others battle that big corporation attitude. And also, we don't, if you don't have a great marketing campaign and you can't offer, good, amazing social media and hundreds of thousands of followers, you often are also ignored for funding as well.
Completely.
Because that's what, so there are a lot of challenges and stuff like that.
Absolutely, Jax. I think you just really nailed everything that I'm coming into this late, but this is all the stuff that I have learned since starting Paws for Giving. And I mean, I started Paws for Giving, the gift shop, in February. So we're doing this now on the 30th of May. So, only 3 months ago, but was selling my Christmas cards that I'd illustrated. I think it was Christmas 2019, maybe. And so, as I've done more and more research, it was looking into pet rescue when I was learning the ropes of ACNC to, sort of understand a bit more about what I could find out about rescues, how I could verify that I'm working with rescues who are reputable and who are actually using funding, for the right kind of things, which is a big statement for me to make. But generally, the way that I look at it is, I don't demonize the rescue who pays their workers. I think that people should be entitled to be paid for work that they do 100%. And I think that there can be a bit of a very sad criticism there in rescue work, because that is not the norm unless you are one of those larger organisations. And in the same way that what you said about pet rescue being a double-edged sword, where you get this benefit from it, but it's also the ethics of it are not exactly, or the structure and the infrastructure, the culture is not what you would love it to be. Or really, if I'll say this, you don't have to. These weren't your words. What it should be. I said it. I got political. You look at the gap that you have between every small and medium animal rescue and every large animal rescue, or those organisations like Pet Rescue, who are now a charity, and the gap is just so different. And then you're right about Saber Life. They're just kind of like this angel in the middle that goes, we're not going to just choose to be a not-for-profit and pay ourselves from our wages and then donate to other rescues, which there is nothing wrong with that. You've got people like the Rescue Collective who are purely focused on supporting other rescues, and they do an amazing job, is my understanding, because, they and ARC as well. So between, ones like that where they're going around and they're supporting other rescues all the time, giving them donations. I know you guys also donate to other rescues, smaller ones, don't you? Yeah.
We do. We donate. And we didn't get even a drop in the bucket compared to some of those other groups as far as donations. But we absolutely have supported several small rescues in New South Wales that were really during the bushfires for medical supplies. We absolutely have sent that. I've mailed bags and bags of supplies across to Queensland, WA, across Victoria. We absolutely will support a smaller rescue as much as possible. We do a lot of little things that I think get missed in the whole rescue thing. We've taken in palliative care cats that we knew were not going to live more than 6 weeks, and we've given them a home. We've helped domestic violence survivors. So we do a lot of stuff in there, and that's what we do. That's what a rescue should do to me.
100%.
But and in no way, as a rescue, do we or I personally demonize it. Bigger rescue that pays their employees. What my thing is, and what I think for a lot of smaller rescues is that profit that's left not actually trickling to the animals and to the other smaller rescues that are out there on the ground, just working themselves, into exhaustion, and and that money is just, it's just not going to the animals like it should. So pay your people, pay your overhead, have a side. But that profit that sits there at the end, that should be going directly into things like education,
boots on the ground stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A triage hospital, like the amount of things that we could do for animals with that leftover profit is massive. But it just goes into people's pockets, and I think that's where the ethics cross the line.
Yeah, and sorry.
No, you go ahead.
Do you feel that? This is a huge question. I think that a lot of people have advocated for, more oversight, and are still currently advocating for like a regulator specific to animal charities. Do you think that kind of thing, if that does come to fruition, I assume it will at some point, it just needs that amount of advocacy. I don't know how long it'll take, how many years, but do you think that kind of thing would be a big help to that issue?
I have often personally, as a rescue, we're not allowed to be political. I just back a party, so I can't say anything about that.
Right.
But I'm a supporter of an independent office of animal welfare, and that I'm a huge supporter of that. That is not that regulates, but not run by the current departments, but run by a committee of say like vets and rescuers, things like that. But they're an independent office, and they would also, to me, I think that would be part of them, is to regulate what charities are doing with their money. We saw many animal charities make millions in donations across the bushfires, and they're still sitting on it. So, that's where, to me, somebody like that would come in and say, hang on a minute. You've got people out there needing stuff. Why isn't that being spread out? And that's the thing. And I think that's the link, is that all that money just rolls in, and it just, it's money, and it starts, we start paying bigger salaries and bonuses and holidays and all these things. And then all the charities like ourselves and even smaller ones than us are exhausted, broke.
So much
on the streets, sweat and tears, and just battling for a $5,000 grant when there's millions floating around in some of these echelon charities that could just completely alleviate some of these problems.
They really could too. And like when I recently just had a quick message chat with Saber Life, and I'm not sure if it was who exactly it was that I was talking to, but I think it was one of the owners, and they pointed out to me what I had heard on a podcast before, I think Michael saying that when they made their first donation, it was $250, and it was a poor dog on death row, basically about to be euthanized for the space at the pound, and it was touch and go. It was like running to the pound with the cash just in time before the deadline. And that's what made the difference in saving a life. And I think when I read more into Saber Life, and I think this is what has made me, I was already passionate about it, but this is what has made me realize so much more about, how important it is about donations going to boots on the ground, and how much when you funnel those donations into a pyramid that, well, really, the pyramid kind of looks like this. You've got these little donations at the bottom that do a huge amount in day-to-day lives. And they don't have to be big. They can be smaller amounts. But when the money sort of gets funneled in, it just gets used up at this top level on these huge things like marketing, exactly what you were saying, marketing, salaries and that kind of thing. And then by the time that it gets down to the bottom, there's basically nothing left. And it's just really sad. But when you look at what is actually needed, exactly like you said, a $5,000 grant would be amazing. And to those larger organizations who do very important work, and I assume you agree with that. My understanding is most rescues do think, the RSPCA is so important, obviously. But just the fact that people see the RSPCA as they are, the main rescue function, they do all the rescue work. So they donate to them, and they donate their $250 a year or something. And it's just so sad, because that $250 could have been the difference between a dog that got euthanized in the pound, because there wasn't room. And I think that's what people don't realise, and that's what I didn't realise until I did my more ACNC financial research and read more about what Saber Life are doing, because their Project Zero, which I'm probably talking at you. I'm not talking at you because I think you don't know about it, but to explain to anyone.
I don't.
Okay. Emily. Emily, anyone listening, their Project Zero is incredible. They started it, I believe when they started, it might have been a couple of years after. I'm not sure if it was right on when they started. But it is to get the rate of euthanasia of dogs that are adoptable in pounds in Australia to 0. And so no dogs are killed in pounds if they can be adopted out. And it's kind of terrifying when you look at not only the rates of dogs that were euthanized. I never know how to say that word. Does someone want to tell me? Is it A's? Eyes?
It just depends on where you're from. I've heard it euthanized and euthanized. I hear it both ways.
Actually, I shouldn't really ask the Texans, should I? Sorry, Jax. Not that it's really the same, but moving from Sydney to Adelaide, I get a lot of criticism for saying things like grant. So if anyone from Adelaide is listening to this, I'm sorry. Grant, we're talking about grants where you give money to a person in case you haven't worked that out from context yet. So they want to get that rate down to 0. And actually, I have a graphic. I'll have to put this up and share a link to it because I've not shared it yet. But I have a graphic that shows how the rate of euthanasia has gone down every year since something like 2014. And it's just the thousands of dogs that were getting euthanized. And you look at it, it's so clear when you hear that story about that one dog that took $250 to get out of the pound, and also the huge the huge increase in people adopting dogs from small rescues instead of breeders, and obviously pet shops, but also pet shops bringing in dogs from rescues for adoption, which is just amazing, like what Pet Barn are doing, I believe. When they get that $250, that is, you get the dog out of the pound, but then the dog needs somewhere to go. And what Saber Life is also doing is making sure that rescues have the funding so that they can, as much as they possibly can anyway, Saber Life. I believe I have no doubt they're donating as much as they possibly can because they're just grant after grant. They're doing an amazing job. But they're helping those rescues so that those rescues can clear a space so that they can get their dogs adopted out. And then there's room in that rescue so that rescue can take that dog as well. And that's why when I've put out, I never used to get, I'll call it political. I never used to get political or social justice about if people adopt from a breeder. But I realised it actually makes a difference. That's one dog. That's one dog that you could have gotten from a pound. The dog at the breeder is going to be fine. Someone else will take that dog.
It'll always find a home.
Yeah, the breeder's not going to put that dog down. But that's one dog that you can take from a rescue, and that the rescue can then have a space, because that foster carer can actually take another dog. And it just seeing that reality is kind of mind-blowing. And I think that's what, and I'm being very specific to dogs, obviously. It applies more so to cats, right? Because cats in pounds, it's just huge. And the amount that are euthanized.
Cats are, they're like a whole basket full of their own issues. Cats, a lot of hate perpetrated toward cats.
True.
We blame them. They are scapegoats for all of humans' problems.
That's so funny.
They are hunted, they're killed, they're bountied, they're poisoned. And we're just, as a country, not looking at the viable option of TNR. It's becoming more and more talked about slowly, and I think there's a lot of conversations. And, we're having to prove that it works, even though we know that it works in the U.S. We know it works. We know it works.
Sorry. Something in rescue.
Trap neuter release. Okay.
But TNR, sorry, I get talking a bit of rescue acronym.
That's okay. I'm very impressed that was the only one so far.
Okay, that's all right.
Well done.
We know it worked. Proof, quality of cats. Their average life cycle is 5 years. They live on the streets. If they're breeding, it just never stops. But if you trap neuter release that whole colony and you put them back, the one, they do a job, particularly for businesses. They keep mice and they keep rats and they keep rats away. Two, if you remove half the colony, another stray will move in. So we know that you're not actually fixing the problem by killing them. You're actually just creating another pocket for another colony to move in. So we know that trap neuter release works. You stop the breeding cycle. Eventually, they die out naturally. So there's a lot of a lot of research and science behind it in many other countries that are doing it, and we're just a bit behind the eight ball here. That one.
That doesn't sound like Australia.
And cats, the kill rate for cats is usually 50 to 60% in a pound.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's huge.
Average.
Really? Is it because compared to dogs, I guess people are less wanting to adopt a cat, because they're just everywhere. You just get a kitten off, and they don't want an older cat. They want a kitten because kittens are cute, like puppies.
They're a throwaway pet. People let them out, they run off, they don't look for them, they go get another one. Our community vet who dissects hundreds. I think they like 1,500 cats last year, so that's huge.
That's enormous.
We're working very hard to. Yeah, that's huge. So 1,500 cats in less than a year of being opened, and that was massive for them. So it is a constant battle with cats, and they sit at 50 to 60 is average. Some pounds go up, it's around 80%. If they sneeze, they're done. If they've got a bit of ringworm, they're gone. There's just we're not investing any money into them at all.
That's horrible.
It's so
it's astounding that
it's
rate
pretty
is so high,
mind-blowing,
60 to 80%.
When so I found sorry, I think I'm getting a delay, guys. So I think I keep on ending up behind you and cutting you off. Sorry, you go, Jax.
All right, you go. No, go for it.
Mine was a slight change of subject.
I go for it. Change the subject.
I found the graphic. I couldn't find the one on the cats, but I found the graphic that I made on why every adoption and donation counts. RSPCA dogs rehomed versus euthanized in 2015 to 2020. In 2015 to 2016 financial year, there were 5,800 dogs euthanized. And in 2019 to 2020, we're down to 3,400 dogs euthanized. And the really interesting thing is that the rehoming stats are going down. And I think that this is what says the most, is that people are moving dogs to rescues. Rescues are taking those dogs out of the pound, or people are getting more educated. People know that they can call a rescue for help before they go and ditch a dog at the pound. People are more into doing behavioural training. And I'd be interested, Jax, you might see this differently too, but those are sort of my guesses, hypotheses. But the rates that have dropped down for rehoming is actually significant. It's 45,000 dogs were rehomed in 2015 to 2016 compared to 28,000 in 2019 to 2020. So I think that combined with the euthanasia going down is just a fantastic thing to see. And I think that the fact that you've got in those years, Saber Life has been operating and has been helping pump up these rescues, and then so many rescues have just been doing amazing work. I think it's a real indicator that for dogs, at least, that model of funneling funding into small rescues so that they can do the fantastic work that they do, it really works. It really helps to save all the animals. Well, dogs at least at the moment.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Funding is the greatest battle. It always is. Whether you're wildlife, whether you're cats, whether you're dogs, it's always a funding issue. And then, there's just the public attitude and the government. So those three are always what we're battling is getting the government to make better decisions around their planning and the things they do, and then battling public attitude about certain animals, and then the funding. And and we're all all rescues. There are some specific funding, things that might be just for dogs or just for this type of that, but for the most part, all rescues, animal rescues, are all sort of battling for the same little pockets of money. And so you might have a grant for $10,000, and you might have 100 animal rescues trying to get that same $10,000. So you just sort of
it's just not sustainable.
No, it's not even remotely. And so it does. We all get a bit exhausted, and we all wonder where the next dollar is coming from. So that often is a perpetual cycle.
That was the end of the first episode of the Paws for Giving podcast, with the second episode being the second part of this interview, which you can check out right now by continuing on wherever you are watching or listening to this episode. Now, if this episode was enough for you for now, don't forget to check out the Australian Animal Rescue. They're at Australian Animal Rescue Inc. on Facebook and Instagram. Don't hesitate to get in touch with them. And if you want to donate to them, they have their PayPal information and bank account details on their Facebook page. So please consider doing that. And if you can't donate in money, please consider donating in time. You can also check out Paws for Giving, the gift shop for Good Humans, where you can get a range of adorable animal themed and other gifts, unique, with something for everyone, at www.pawsforgiving.com.au. And remember, 50% of profits are donated to animal rescues like Australian Animal Rescue. You choose the rescue at checkout and decide who we donate to. Don't forget to sign up to our mailing list and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Paws for Giving for amazing memes, inspirational quotes, updates, cute animal pictures and rescue updates, and just all the latest rescue news. And most importantly, whenever a new episode of this podcast comes out, please consider rating this video podcast, giving us a big 5 stars, and hit subscribe so that we can keep doing this, and so that we can see if this is something that you like, that we'll keep going. Thank you so much for checking this out. Bye.